Hi, it's Ursula from ursula-smith.com, and I'm back with Micaceous iron oxide. I was not even going to film this, but my camera's sitting around here, or my phone is sitting around here, so I was just wondering, I did a video where I mixed Distress Oxide ink in brown into the Micaceous iron oxide and painted it on, first because I wanted a brown base that I was going to emboss with an embossing folder, but then I was doing this technique where I was removing paint through a stencil, but again, that was brown. So what I'm wondering is if that technique would work, and the brown kind of seeped into the cardstock, and I kind of got this two-tone look. So I'm just wondering if the same thing would happen if I were to use a different color. So I'm going to try and mix in, I'm just going to use this Uncharted Mariner because that's what I have kicking around. And I'm not sure. It may not. Maybe it'll do something cool. Maybe it won't. So I'm just going to paint it on. And with the removal technique, you really want a thinner coat of the Micaceous iron oxide because it's a really thick paint, and it's kind of gritty. It's got all these sparkles to it. I just love this paint. But for this particular technique, it's a little, you don't want a whole lot on the cardstock, especially I'm using the cheap cardstock. I keep thinking I should, oh, and I can't use that, can I? Oh, Well, hopefully it won't dry while I do this. I'll go off and paint something else with it. So I'm just going to take a stencil, and again, I've kind of been trying to figure out the right stencil to use for this technique. I feel like more of the open work is better. And I know I just put that on, but I'm still going to try and wet it to make it move a little bit quicker. So this has a little bit of open space, but then it has a little bit of tiny spaces. So I'm going to try and just work the big open work first, or the big open spaces first. And then in another video, I had played around with using a scrubby brush. That was pretty stiff, and that helped move a little bit more out of those corners. In the little areas. So that's interesting. It does look like some of the blue is in there, or showing up anyway. And worst comes to worst, I could always come back over with the spray directly. If I wanted a little bit bluer. But I like that faded tone-on-tone look, so that's kind of why. I don't remember what I was doing. I was probably trying to fix a boo-boo, and I was like, ooh, that looks cool. And now I've been playing around with the technique ever since. So let's see this stencil, what this does. Okay, so that, it looks like I had an okay combination of the thickness of the paint and the stencil itself. So I will say this is a Yupo paper one that I cut myself. I did layer 3, I think it's 3, maybe it's only 2. It might only be 2. I can't remember if it's 2 or 3, but it just makes it a little bit less flexible, and it also doesn't have lots of little dangly bits, so it's just a little bit easier to get in there and move the paint without wrecking the stencil. So I'm going to leave that texture because I kind of like that. I call this my grunge chain link. Started out as a stamp years ago, and that's kind of the look I was going for anyway, really kind of a grungy look, broken down type of look to it. So I actually like this. It's not as blue, I feel like, as I might have hoped, but it's kind of a faded blue. I do like it. I am going to try doing it where I do the paint with a spray of ink on top and then the removal, and then we can kind of compare the looks together. But I like that. So I'm going to go off and let it dry, and when it's dry, I will be back. Hi, I'm back, and so my piece has dried, and you can see the blue in it. It's not as blue. I did another video where I painted Micaceous iron oxide, sprayed over the top of it when it was wet, and then did the removal. And that came out more blue than mixing it in. Now, could have been the color, could have been the amount. Usually what I do is I take a little puddle and a couple of squirts of the Distress Oxide. Could have been a little bit less in this case. So again, you still can see the blue, but it isn't as blue as, let me see if I can find it. I have these things kicking around here still. Okay, so this was the one where I painted with the Micaceous iron oxide, sprayed over the top of it while it was still wet, and then removed. So there's a little more blue in that case, less so here. You can still see a little bit of the blue, and I could pull some more blue in if I really wanted that. But I like, so I guess my point is you could do it anyway. You can mix the paint in. You can, especially if you're going to do the removal, actually there's only two ways you could do it. Paint and then spray while the paint is still wet and then remove, or puddle a couple of sprays of the Distress Oxide, paint it on, and then remove. Either way, I feel like you're going to get a cool look. So again, this was spray over the top of the wet paint. This was mixed in. And I was thinking, oh, if I want more color, this is the way to do it. However, hold that thought, because I started playing around with a different color. So this one was, I started out, I wanted to do peeled paint. And I was kind of going for that more, to me, it's still a kind of an olivey color, but it's more green versus the crushed olive. But at the last minute, I decided to just add, and I literally just added one squirt of the crushed olive Distress Oxide. Again, this was a mix-in. So puddle of Micaceous iron oxide, 2 sprays of peeled paint, 1 of crushed olive, and the crushed olive just took over. So it's a cool look. Like, I love the way it came out. So again, versus the blue, excuse me, the blue was a much lighter coloring, and crushed olive, like I said, just literally took over, overpowered the peeled paint, and definitely you can see the color. So that's what I mean. It depends on how much you add, what colors you add. Still both cool looks, but different. And so then I was like, all right, well, I really want the peeled paint. And so I did it again, but I still had crushed olive kind of sitting around. So it still came out more olive than the peeled paint. And so then what I did was I sprayed over the top with a completely different color. I think it was Uncharted Mariner, if I remember correctly. It was either Uncharted Mariner or a Salvage Patina, but I think it was the Mariner color. And so And that was sprayed through the stencil, so it only got, on the open areas. And so that was a cool look. So, a little bit of the crushed olive where the paint got lifted up, and, some more of a different color. So again, don't give up. Try something else. And I love the way that came out. And then, not deterred, I did do it one more time. But I liked having that blue in there. So I think with that, I just either used a paintbrush or my finger to, tap on the leftover spray and pull it through. But it is a little more of the peeled paint. Still a lot of that crushed olive in there, though. So that's more of like a three-tone look. So again, I really liked the way that one came out. And then my last example, which I just did, so it's still kind of wet. I am trying to make a graduation card for my son, who's graduating from law school. And I have this, so this was one of my laser print and cuts. So I printed it on it. This is the seal from his university. Printed it in laser on a laser printer, foiled it with the foiling machine because their colors are gold and black. And then I was looking for, trying to figure out what am I going to layer it on. And my mother was making him a card as well. And she mentioned that the color for his degree is purple. And so I'm still not sure I'm going to actually, because to me that's too stark. I don't know. So I may not end up using this background for that. But what I did in this case was this was a mixture. So I mixed a puddle of Micaceous iron oxide, and then I used wilted violet in Distress Oxide spray. A couple of pumps in there. And then I'm looking at it and I was like, okay, that's kind of lavender, not, a little bright, not as purple as I really wanted. And so this time what I did was I sprayed regular Distress spray stain into it in Villainous Potion. Just a one spray. And so that dulled down that kind of bright light color and made it a little bit deeper. So that was more of the effect that I was going for. So again, I'm not sure that I'm actually going to end up using that for the card, but that is yet another thing for you to try especially if you're mixing. I mean, I suppose you could do it ad hoc too if you are doing it the paint and then spray over while it's wet. You could still try spraying, the two different sprays in. The difference I feel with the mixing is I feel like you get a better chance of having the color, which is the Distress Oxide, or in this case, Distress Oxide and regular spray stain. I feel like you have a better chance at having that color hit the cardstock so that you get more of the color that you're mixing in. Now, that's not necessarily always true because my first example with the blue, it was not as blue as the purple or the crushed olive one. But I do still feel like I like that way better. Plus, it's a little bit thinner when you paint it on, so it's easier to remove. So again, it's kind of up to you. It's quicker to paint, spray, and then remove versus, making the puddle, spraying, mixing, getting it all mixed in there and then painting. But again, it's not that much of a difference in time. So it's up to you which way you would like to try it. Try both ways. See if you like it. Maybe you'll come up with a completely different way of using Micaceous iron oxide with Distress Oxide together. But in any event, I love the combination. I love the results, especially in this case. So thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.